Have you ever wondered what happened to some of those incredible inventions we were all promised? You know, the ones that were supposed to completely change the world? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into exactly that. Why some of these truly groundbreaking technologies seem to get stuck or sometimes just vanish.
So let's start with a real classic, the 100-mile-per-gallon car. I mean, for decades we've heard these stories, right? Tales of brilliant inventors creating these hyper-efficient carburetors. So if the tech was real, why isn't it in every single car on the road today? Is it really some big conspiracy?
Well, the truth is, it's usually a lot more complicated than some secret group of people meeting in a shadowy room. The real roadblocks are often hiding in plain sight, built right into the very economic and legal systems we live in.
What we're actually talking about here is a very real phenomenon. It's called technology suppression. And yeah, it's a documented thing, where incredible inventions get delayed, put on a shelf, or sometimes actively blocked from ever seeing the light of day.
So just to be super clear, when we say technology suppression, we're not talking about spies and secret agents. We're talking about systemic friction. It's what happens when powerful money interests or clunky old regulations or even just plain institutional inertia gets in the way of a brilliant new idea. Let's start by looking at the first major barrier, money.
Okay, so let's dive right into this first major hurdle, what I'm calling the economic wall. This is all about how existing incredibly profitable industries protect what they already have from new technologies that could totally disrupt their business.
Get ready for this, because here is a wild example. Way back in the 1960s, a tobacco company actually developed a cigarette, they codenamed it XA, that they believed could strip out most of the cancer-causing stuff from the smoke. Just imagine that for a second. A potentially safer cigarette decades ago. So, what happened to it?
The reason it got shut down is right here, from an internal memo. The company's own lawyers ordered them to scrap the entire project. And why? It wasn't because they were worried the product wouldn't work. No, they were terrified that putting a safer cigarette on the market would be a legal admission that their other cigarettes were dangerous. It was all about avoiding liability, not about the product's potential.
Or, let's look at the early days of electric cars. The powerful NiMH batteries that those first EVs desperately needed, they got locked down by patents. You can see how it played out here. An oil giant, Chevron, ended up with control over those critical patents. And by making it nearly impossible to get the large format batteries needed for EVs, they basically hit the brakes on the entire market for years, right when it was just starting to get going.
And you see this same pattern over and over in all sorts of industries. Those 100-mile-per-gallon carburetors, patents were allegedly bought up by oil interests and just shelved. Wireless phones, AT&T sat on that tech for decades to protect its massive investment in all those copper wires. And even medicine isn't safe from this. A pharmaceutical company reportedly ignored an innovation that could have cut drug dosages in half, simply because it would have also cut their profits in half. Now let's talk about the second major barrier, the systemic wall. This is where things get even trickier, because it's not just about corporations. This is when governments, regulators, and yeah, even the scientific community itself become the gatekeepers of progress.
Just look at this number, over 6,000. That's how many private inventions are currently slapped with government secrecy orders just in the US. Now, sure, a lot of them are for national security, but the Invention Secrecy Act can also be used to suppress technologies that might threaten economic stability, which is basically a nice way of saying technologies that could shake up powerful industries.
And you know, suppression isn't always some big plot. Sometimes it's just inertia. We have these amazing low-carbon alternatives to concrete, which, as you know, is a huge source of CO2 emissions, but they're running into a brick wall of outdated industry standards and regulations. There's literally no box to check for these new materials, so they just can't get used, no matter how much better they are.
And believe it or not, the scientific community can build its own walls too. When cold fusion was first announced back in 1989, it was almost immediately dismissed by the mainstream. And this created such a powerful stigma that for decades it became nearly impossible to get funding or academic support for any research into the field. It was basically dead on arrival in the public eye.
Okay, this next part is absolutely crucial. If we're going to talk about this stuff credibly, we have to be able to separate the documented cases of real suppression from claims that are frankly just bad science.
Which, of course, brings us to the most famous claim of them all, the car that runs on water. It is the ultimate story of a suppressed invention. But does it really belong in the same category as the NiMH battery or that safer cigarette? Here's how you tell the difference.
On one side, you've got plausible suppression. The way it happens is through real-world stuff, like patent abuse or regulations, like with the NiMH batteries. And the end result is a market delay. On the other side, you have claims that have been discredited, like the water car. The proposed mechanism literally violates the laws of physics. And the outcome? Well, in this specific case, a court found the inventor guilty of gross and egregious fraud. One is about economics, the other is pure fiction.
So when you pull all of these different threads together, the economic walls, the systemic barriers, the institutional inertia, what are we really looking at? We're looking at a state of what you could call innovation gridlock.
And this brings us to the key takeaway, a concept known as the anti-commons problem. It basically shows us that suppression isn't just one bad guy pulling all the strings. It's a gridlock. You have too many different groups, corporations, governments, entire industries, and they all have the power to say no to a new idea. And when everybody has a key to a different lock on the same door, well, transformative ideas can end up stuck outside forever.
And that really leaves us with one final, and I think really important question. Now that we know how this gridlock actually works, what amazing ideas are being silenced right now? What future breakthroughs are just sitting on a shelf somewhere? Not because they don't work, but because our current system just isn't ready for them. Something to think about. Thanks for watching.